the Landorus, pressure that a little bit of a different way, maybe follow me away some attacks from the Arcanine.
I see the logic in that for sure, but I think I would always want Aurora Veil up as well. However, there is no snow to be found yet. Maybe it's going to be in the back for a forecast later on in the day. Ogerpon a piece this time, and Arcanine a piece.
Both of these traders, they know exactly what to do.
They've figured it out.
They've figured this out already. They've already played before. They've probably played some in practice. They know their teams very well, and so a similar lead here. And now it comes down to the decisions that they want to make. What move is this choice band Arcanine on each side of the field going to lock into? Do they go straight for the rock slides? Do they go for the follow me's on maybe trying to out-predict their opponent and go for the flare blitzes into the Ogerpon, try to remove that follow me piece a little bit earlier on and open the way for their ice-type Pokemon in the back? And of course, do they follow me away, Ivy Cudgels away from the Arcanine, right?
That is a very good question to see exactly where they want to line up the rest of this board state. I mean, the Ogerpon we've seen so many times today being such a key supportive Pokemon with that follow me, just enabling so much support to protect the partner Pokemon and allow it to wreak havoc on the battlefield. A Pokemon such as the Arcanine with those rock slides that can be so formidable. This time the Arcanine is going for its Terra Ghost, so isn't going to be taking any super effective attacks from any fighting moves and things like this. But look at that, Ben. I think we are in a mirror. Is it a mirror?
Is it? I think it is a mirror. It's like looking in the mirror right now here, Lou, where both of these Arcanine deciding that instead of having the follow me support to take away the Ivy Cudgel from knocking out the most important piece of their board in the Arcanine, they're going to Terra Ghost instead, but it's an Ivy Cudgel coming out a piece here. One getting a critical hit, Emir on the downside of that play, but getting the Rock Slide off first is not getting the flinch. Rock Slide comes in. Arcanine on Emir's side has gone down, and that resource is going to be down and out for the rest of this match.
These players know how to play, locking in the exact same moves, the exact same ideas, but the one thing out of their control is that critical hit chance, and that is exactly what the Ivy Cudgel on Nikhil's side was able to come through and do, enabling that KO. But in order to retaliate with a Frosty reception, the Ninetales has come onto the field and set that snow.
Blizzard will be able to knock out the Arcanine here, and there's no way for the Ogerpon to be able to redirect that. It's also going to take a good chunk of damage unless it, well, in fact, it can't go for the Terra, it can't take away its grass typing now, so it's definitely going to take a chunk, and if the Ogerpon on Emir's side is going to be able to go first, then maybe that's putting some pressure on Nikhil, but it will be the way that these are trained. Blizzard coming out first, Ninetales coming in to take that like a charm, but a critical hit and a freeze!
Able to get the freeze into that opposing Ogerpon here. The Ninetales.
And a 4-out.
It thaws straight away. It's like it never happened. The Horn Leech coming through, gaining a little bit of recovery because the Blizzard didn't do a catastrophic amount, but that freeze could have been absolutely devastating. The Horn Leech also going down into that opposing Alolan Ninetales here. Really, really nice to gain that bit of recovery. What I love here, Ben, is it's like, I've got a Ninetales, well, I can do that too. Here's my Ninetales.
But a little bit of a divergence in the moves that these trainers have been using. The Horn Leech coming out from both of the Ogerpon, but targeting down differently. Now Emir getting some damage onto Nikhil's. Ninetales may make a little bit of a difference, especially since that Ogerpon on Nikhil's side has taken a little bit more damage than Emir's.
And I think the Ninetales are really safe at the minute to go for those Aurora Veils, start setting up a little bit defensively. And there it is, the first Aurora Veil in play for Emir, getting that defense and special defense boosted on the field for 8 turns. The Ivy Cudgeling Ogerpon comes through, doesn't get a critical hit this time, just a little bit of damage on the board, and there is the Aurora Veil on the other side, because you don't want to enable your opponent to set one up and you not at least even the score.
And a real hint to the training here of these Ogerpon being faster than the Ninetales. That means they're probably trained to be as fast as they're capable of being, or near enough, unless these Ninetales are running a little bit more of a slow, supportive set. And that really changes the dynamic of whether or not the Ogerpon can stop the Ninetales going for an Aurora Veil in the coming games here, and whether they can find that position. Now, with Emir bringing the Articuno onto the board, it's carrying the choice specs. Both of these trainers have got their Aurora Veil up, and now Emir has moved into a position where they can more quickly go for those Blizzards with the Articuno.
Gets the special attack drop as well. That can be critical as the Ivy Cudgel connects down into this Ninetales once again, just chipping away at it. A little bit of damage on the board. Another Moonblast comes through again, chipping away, and also gets the special attack. They really are mimicking each other as best they can. Of course, no Sheer Cold coming through. It's going to be the Blizzard, which I think is the correct play. You know it's going to attack. You're just chipping away at this opposing Ninetales, and you get the chip on the Ogerpon.
And that is the name of this game, especially with the Arcanine going for its Terra. It no longer resists those Blizzards from the Articuno, so great call out there, Lou. It's going to be the game, a little bit of a backwards and forwards, little bits of damage through the Aurora Veil until maybe Emir takes a knockout, and then the Arcanine gets an opportunity to come back in. Emir doesn't have that opportunity anymore because that Arcanine went down earlier.
Exactly, and of course the snow also boosting up the defenses of these ice Pokemon. The Ivy Cudgel isn't going to be appreciating that wall. It's got to break through. The Moonblast again, chip away at this Ninetales. Articuno will be able to connect down onto the opposing Alolan Ninetales and just put it in a little bit more of a precarious situation. It's still able to hang on though, but I think one more Blizzard coming out from Emir's side will get a double KO here.
Definitely a double KO range for both of these Pokemon, and Ninetales doesn't have the opportunity to protect itself because it's carrying the Helping Hand instead. And so there is an opportunity for some repositioning to go on for Emir. You know the Blizzard is going to get the knockouts, so you can switch in that Ogerpon now preemptively before the Arcanine can rejoin the field. It's a Horn Leech into that Ogerpon and the switch in, healing things up, but Lou, I don't think it's going to be enough.
With the Aurora Veil, it'll be difficult to tell. So the Moonblast comes through into the Ogerpon that just switched in for Emir, gets a special attack drop, but it doesn't worry about that. This is the thing. The Blizzard does get the double knockout though.
Double knockout on the kills, 2 Pokemon. It is 3-2 now, and Emir has the Pokemon advantage, but also the Pokemon momentum here. Arcanine can be switching in. We talked about it for a couple of turns already, but this match is Blizzard after Blizzard. It's moving at a little bit more of a glacial pace rather than a fast and furious one, but Arcanine is here to turn up the heat.
Slow and steady can sometimes win the race though, Ben. And one other thing I really like about Emir's play with that Ninetales is the snow has now left the field. So being able to bring the Alolan Ninetales back in later will keep the accuracy of those Blizzards in check. But hopefully, if you're Emir, you'll have eliminated the Blizzard users on the opposing side before you're able to utilize that. Nikhil down to his last 2 remaining Pokemon, the Hisuian Arcanine and the Articuno.
And now the Arcanine is in a bit of a precarious position. In this spot, you have to land a priority attack into the Ogerpon because that's the fastest Pokemon on the field, if I'm not quite mistaken. Yeah, the Articuno is pairing up with the Arcanine. So yeah, an Ivy Cudgel is an easy target into that Arcanine, and Intimidate isn't going to be enough to save it. It is picking up the KO, and Articuno on Emir's side is just that little bit safer.
Must have been tempting to go for something like an extreme speed there to try and get the knockout, but you need something like the Rock Slide to try and get the double KO against that opposing Articuno, because now Articuno on Nikhil's side is going to be vulnerable to all of the attacks that Emir can bring through. You do now have the Alolan Ninetales coming through, and I feel like we're just going to see a Blizzard, then a Blizzard, and maybe a Blizzard.
Lou, I think there's going to be a Blizzard as well.
I think so too. It's getting a little bit frosty in here, but that's the strategy when you came up against 2 snow teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is how this sort of matchup can go. You try to target down in the early game the Pokemon that really cause your Ice-type Pokemon a lot of trouble, that being the Hisuian Arcanine. In both of our trainers' cases, one managed to get it done early, one managed to get it done a little bit later on, but the net effect is the Helping Hand Blizzard is going to be easily enough to pick up a 2-hit knockout here. Emir landing that into Nikhil's Articuno. Another Helping Hand, another Blizzard. That's going to wrap up the game for Emir.
Look how much help that hand is doing to the damage count against that opposing Articuno. Critical hit, single target attack, it's going to get the KO, and Emir advances with 1 game forward in this set. It's going to be a tall order for these trainers, but I am so hyped to see how this whole set plays out.
You definitely want to be in the position where you've got 1 game in your favor in a matchup like this. Any decision that you make that you get slightly wrong because your opponent knows exactly what you're thinking, any turn where maybe your Pokemon gets outsped, any turn where you get critical hit through Aurora Veil, these things can really make a difference to the matchup because every single resource that these trainers have have is so vital to their game plan in the end game. And so, yeah, you want two opportunities here to be able to do that, and that's what Emir has been able to create.
I think you make a really good point, Ben, because this match was very telegraphed by both trainers. They went for the same leads. They had the same couple of turns playing out at the beginning. They brought the same Pokemon. And it was really just those nuances, the critical hit or the switch, these little changes are what created the end game we saw in that game one. And I think game two is going to be exactly the same. It's going to come down to those little adjustments. But Ben, do you see any reason to change the leads, or were they called correctly by our trainers?
I'm gonna hesitantly say yes, and it is hesitantly because when you're looking at this mirror match where you're not as experienced as these two trainers are, it looks like they both know exactly what they're doing and they're both approaching the matchup in the same way. My theory is that that is, on average, the best way to approach the matchup. So I agree with our trainers.
Okay.
Equally, I've just got this little bit of a nagging sensation in the back of my mind that actually this is the turn to really switch things up, and especially for Emir that got the game in their favor, they can try something a little bit different to take advantage of that Ogerpon Arcanine lead. That's what I'd really like to see in this game.
Maybe the element of surprise, while you have the advantage, can afford to take more of a risk, let's say. But Pokemon trainers, this is your top 8 at the Utrecht special event. We are in game 2 of this match, which is a mirror of ice, and it is going to be an adaptation. The Arcanine and the Alolan Ninetales front and center for Emir, and on the opposing side that Ogerpon, but this time Landorus has been brought to the match. Two
players making different decisions about how to combat Arcanine and Ogerpon in the lead matchup. Nikhil going for the Landorus, trying to get Sludge Bomb damage into the Ogerpon to free up the position to be able to Earth Power the Arcanine. Instead, Emir going for the opportunity to go for Freeze Dries into the Ogerpon to remove that so that the Arcanine is a little bit more free to just go for Rock Slides, etc. Now, as it turns out, Blizzard looks pretty good.
It does, but there is a Steel Terror on that Landorus, so that could throw a spanner in the works, being able to then resist all of these Ice-type attacks. And another way to avoid them is to leave the field. Arcanine joining the fray, throwing that Intimidate down. This is only critical against the opposing Arcanine, weakening some of that Rock Slide pressure that it has. I mean, it's also leaving the field. It goes, you can't intimidate me. I'm going to leave. I'm not accepting this.
And Articuno coming in, trying to take an Earth Power on the switch in. Ninetales setting up that Aurora Veil. That's the other great thing about leading the Ninetales. You get that defensive capability up turn 1. Aurora Veil and the Snow boosting up Articuno's defenses means it's not going to be taking a lot of damage here, but now it's being threatened down by that Arcanine. What a great switch in for Nikhil.
It is, and that's definitely a precarious spot for it to be in. This Arcanine is full out offensive with an Ice Terror type, so that doesn't even have any defensive support. The question is, though, Ben, is the way to get rid of the Arcanine to go for the sheer cold, or is it way too much of a risk?
I think it's too much of a risk. I think you've got enough damage on the board with just going for Blizzards or going for a Freeze Dry to remove the Articuno, the Ogerpon from the field instead, and not really worrying too much about having to knock out the Articuno with a move that's quite as unreliable. I think this is the turn to switch up your board state.
Okay, well, we're not going to see any switches on Emir's side of the field, but we are going to see some Terrestrializations come into the fray, and it is going to be on that Articuno, using that Ice Terror type to get even more damage behind its Ice-type moves. This looks like it is indeed going to be something like the Blizzard, that double spread damage. Ninetales goes first, though. Little bit of chip on both the opposing side. As the Arcanine moves first, that Rock Slide not enough to get the KO, but definitely difficult to deal with.
Double Blizzard coming out from Emir, that Rock Slide going into the now only super effective Articuno, and you can see the effect of the Snow, you can see the effect of the Aurora Veil here, protecting that Articuno from taking too much damage. But Lou, no freezes on the board, and that Arcanine is going to get another chance to go for a Rock Slide.
No flinches either, critically. That could have been a little bit difficult, but if there's the double up on Nikhil's side, it might be able to move before this Articuno. There's the Moonblast, guaranteeing that if the Rock Slide connects, it will get the knockout. It does find its mark.
And it is a double knockout for Nikhil, getting Ninetales and Articuno off the board, bringing this turn back with an absolute storm here. That's a crazy amount of damage coming into both of those Pokemon, given those boosts from the weather, given those boosts from the Aurora Veil that Ninetales was able to set up.
And that Choice Band as well on the Arcanine really coming through to be able to give that extra power behind its damaging attacks. Ogerpon and the Arcanine, now the last two remaining Pokemon for Emir. Such a quick turnaround in this game too.
But we know that the Ogerpon is faster than the Ninetales, and so it's going to be able to launch out an Ivy Cudgel onto that slot, or potentially onto the Arcanine slot. You could, if you're Emir, thinking that you're in a little bit of a difficult situation, actually go for a potential speed tie between these Arcanine. If you get it, then you can knock out the Ninetales, potentially. I'm not sure of the damage rolls. I don't think Nikhil was able to set up Aurora Veil just yet on his side of the field. Maybe I missed it if he did, but if it's not on the board, then this Ninetales is definitely going down, and you'll be able to follow up with a Rock Slide and be able to try to get that Arcanine down.
Yeah, I think it's just gone for the Moonblast so far, but the Ivy Cudgel, fast and quick-footed, is able to get the knockout on that opposing Arcanine, so just trying to even the score a little bit here. The Aurora Veil does now go up on that Alola Ninetale side because it is faster than this opposing Arcanine and gives Nikhil a little bit more breathing room, but Arcanine doesn't even go for the Rock Slide, goes for the Flare Blitz, locks into that move, and I really, really like this. However, you've still got to contend with that Landorus when it comes back in.
Well, I think contending with the Landorus is exactly why the Arcanine switched into, or went for the Flare Blitz. You mentioned it earlier, the Terra Steel on the Landorus there. With Aurora Veil, I'm not sure that the Arcanine would be able to knock out a Landorus in one hit unless it did go for the Terra Steel in this case, but you're giving yourself the best opportunity in an endgame to close out the options that Nikhil has available. Of course, we do know that the Ogerpon is pretty speedy, at least on both of these trainers' teams. If that's the case, now we've got a situation where we've seen in other more expected matchups where you get the Ogerpons on the field facing down against each other. Do they go for the follow me? Well, that is the question that these trainers have to answer.
Tends to be the follow me or something like the Horn Leech just to get a bit of recovery on the field. But it's the Ivy Cudgel coming up first from the Ogerpon on Nikhil's side, and will get the KO onto that Arcanine with the critical hit. It drops like a hot rock, and now there is nothing really to stop this Landorus.
Nothing at all to stop the Landorus except for this Ogerpon. It's gone for a Horn Leech into the Ogerpon, maybe expecting that Nikhil wasn't going to go for the Ivy Cudgel, and Nikhil catching Emir off guard there. Now Horn Leech is going to be the only damage-dealing move that this Ogerpon is going to be able to do on Emir's side, because it's able to be redirected by Nikhil's Ogerpon, and the Landorus can just go for the Terror as well. A little bit of insult to injury here, and go for any damaging attacks, usually the Sludge Bomb in this position.
But it's the perfect timing, right, to go for this Terrestrialization. You've got rid of the Flare Block blitzing Arcanine on the opposing side, and you now can have that defensive capability against the Water and Grass type moves. Of course, the Ogerpon is going for the Ivy Cudgel into that opposing Landorus, but look at the defensive capability it has now. Sludge Bomb, not enough to be able to get the KO, but considering Ogerpon only has single target type attacks, we're going to be seeing a Game 3.
You sometimes forget, Lou, how much damage reduction Aurora Veil actually does, both on the physical side and on the special side. And I'm kind of wondering in this spot, when looking back at the previous turn where the Ivy Cudgel went into the Arcanine, it did manage to knock it out with a critical hit. It is 4 times super effective. But my question is Aurora Veil enough to be able to stop it with the Intimidate as well that went down onto Ogerpon on Nikhil's side? Did it actually need the critical hit, and was Emir actually playing for a pretty high percentage chance to be able to knock out that Ogerpon or the Landorus that turn?
It's a lot of questions, a lot of different perspectives you can have, but as this match finishes up, the Sludge Bomb comes through, will go into the Spiky Shield, and I actually like this play by Emir here, just taking a last couple of turns to really think towards Game 3, because this is their tournament lifelines on the line. This is top 8, the winner will go through to top 4, so the Ogerpon on Nikhil's side, just redirecting in any of the attacks, enabling the Landorus to be able to close out this game.
Horn Leech into the Ogerpon, doing a little bit of damage, getting a little bit of HP recovery back, but the Sludge Bomb is enough. That HP recovery is not enough. Nikhil Reddy taking this top 8 set in Utrecht to a Game 3.
I love a Game 3. It's more Pokemon action for us and more intense moments for you viewers at home. I'm sure the players would rather a quick and clean 2-0, but sometimes in these Top Cut matches, because you are battling against the best and you've got to beat them in order to keep advancing, you have to make sure every single play is perfect.
Yeah, and it's so difficult in this matchup between these two players. Now, we saw a switch up in Game 2 to Game 1. it looked like Emir was on the front foot for the early stages of that game, but Nikhil was able to show us a little bit of a different way to position that match and be able to come back. I especially liked how Nikhil was able to use that Moonblast chip damage on the Articuno to get it into KO range of that Arcanine. Once you've got two Blizzard users on the field, the Arcanine's feeling a little bit more free and easy to be able to just go for those rock slides.
I think Nikhil took a few tips from the way Emir played game one, you know, going for that constant chip damage and whittling away at Nikhil's team. And as you've just said, in this game two, it was really about the Alola Ninetales on Nikhil's team going for that Moonblast, for that extra little bit of chip, and it really did stack up towards the end in order to get those KOs. I mean, the double knockout that came through was just a really, really big turning point in that match. And now in the game three, Ben, I'm going to ask you the same kind of question, okay? Because we did...
Lou, I don't want to answer the question. I know what's coming.
Tough. You're stuck on this desk with me. We did see an adaptation. We did see the Landorus come in. Do you think we're going to see more changes, or are they going to stick with their icy modes?
I think we're going to see at least one of them go back to game one.
Okay, that's fair.
I think we're going to see at least one of them go back to game one. What else we're going to see, I just could not call it, Lou, in this situation. If I was playing this matchup, I'd be leading down the Ninetales in the lead, try to get up that Aurora Veil early in the game. But the choice of whether to bring Arcanine in the front or in the back, I think is really, really challenging call to make, because it really does depend on how your opponent plays the game. I think I'd swing towards the Arcanine in the lead, and then you can defensively switch that out into the Ogerpon if you need to. And if you see the Ice-type Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field, great, you're having a party.
I think the critical thing is that you don't really have ways to stop Aurora Veil going up on the opposing side, because these Alola Ninetales are so fast. And one of them so fast is out in the lead next to that Arcanine. However, it is double trouble, and snow warning is all around trainers, as it is the Articuno and the Alola Ninetales for Emir, just double downing on this ice mode.
I'm going to take it, Lou. I called one of the leads.
You did. You certainly did. And actually, there's two Alola Ninetales front and center, so you almost double called it here. But the critical thing is, how will this affect turn one?
Well, the Rock Slide is going to be putting on a lot of pressure straight out of the gates here, and it's down to Emir to reposition. Now, the disadvantage of leading Arcanine and your opponent not leading Arcanine is that you get the person that doesn't lead Arcanine gets the opportunity to bring that Intimidate in and lower the power of the Rock Slide.
Yeah.
You've already got Snow on the board. You've already potentially got the opportunity to get the Aurora Veil up. It's a really nice, safe switch into Arcanine to be able to get that Intimidate down onto the field. Instead, though, Aurora Veil and the Ogerpon Wellspring joining for Emir.
Just a little bit of a temptation having that Articuno on the field, but now it's the Ogerpon in play, and we're going to see some beautiful northern lights come down onto this snowy terrain right now. And it's
Head Smash!
Head Smash! Haven't seen that in a hot minute. It avoids the opposing Ogerpon, though. Not the most accurate moves, but definitely one of the most devastating.
That is one way to get through a lot of defensive boost, Lou. Just going for the most powerful rock-type move, increased in power by the choice band as well, and no Intimidate coming in this turn makes a big difference. But Nikhil not managing to land that on the Ogerpon definitely wants to get the Arcanine on out of there, and the Articuno is joining the field to take a Blizzard.
Just a little bit of Blizzard action on the field as the Ivy Cudgel comes down and connects onto that opposing Articuno, but it's nice defenses and the Aurora Veil helping it out. The Blizzard is returned. Critical hit, but again, you almost squint and you'd miss it because the damage is so negligible right now.
And now the Articuno's on the field. That is the only one of the two Ice-type Pokemon that we have on the kill side of the field that has access to Freeze Dry. This could be a turn to get a little bit cheeky and lock into Freeze Dry, knock out the Ogerpon, and then your Arcanine is a little bit safer in the back to switch in without fear of those Water-type Ivy Cudgels really ruining Arcanine's day. But it's a big thing to be able to lock into here. And of course, if the Arcanine, which is, I think I've seen already, Emir has waiting in the wings, if you lock into Freeze Dry, well, you're not going to be doing too much damage either.
Yes, and the Alola Ninetales has kind of done its job here. It got the Aurora Veil up, and that Arcanine you just mentioned, Ben, is now coming out front and center, throwing that Intimidate down, which doesn't matter. It's about the rocks it's going to throw in the next turn.
Ogerpon also retreating as well here, bringing in the Articuno from the back to take any Ice-type moves from Nikhil's side of the field, with both of these trainers getting their Aurora Veils in play. it's quite safe to have this kind of switching game, changing the momentum, changing your board state, trying to get that position where you can, like Nikhil did earlier, get a head smash onto the board and change the state of this game.
Moonblast comes through into the Arcanine. It is going to get special attack drop, but that is to no avail as the opposing Articuno goes for the Blizzard. Of course, not going to do too much damage to the Articuno, but that was a significant chunk to the Arcanine.
Critical hit.
With that crit. Now the Arcanine, oh, it's the kind of Pokemon that just wants to throw rocks at things that shine. That glistening ice on the Articuno, so tempting, but its HP bar is so low.
And that's not going to be able to take too many more attacks. A double up from this Articuno and from the Ninetales would easily be able to knock this out on this turn. And the question being is whether or not the Arcanine or the Articuno is the faster of all of these Pokemon. It looks like it's the Arcanine.
Yes, Arcanine does have some speedy potential, which is why I think it's being matched with the opposing Arcanine on Nikhil's side of the field, getting that Articuno out of here to come back and Blizzard another day. The Articuno on Emir's side primed to once again just keep going for these Blizzards and keep chipping away. But it looks like we're going to see the Terrestrialization of that Articuno as well. I think it's an all-out force of Ice types.
Ice Terra type is a really good Terra type to be locking into. You make yourself a little bit less susceptible to the Ice type moves of your opponent, all those Blizzards. You make yourself a little bit more defensive and you're able to do a little bit more damage as well. Blizzard not capable of knocking out the Arcanine this turn, and a great switch out the Arcanine for Nikhil because that Flare Blitz did do absolutely no damage to the Arcanine on the switch in.
Almost KO'd itself by going for that Flare Blitz into the opposing Arcanine there due to the recoil, but just able to hang on 5 hit points remaining. This is where things get really interesting, though, with the speeds, because the Arcanine on the kill side has now switched in. It isn't locked into its choice band move of choice yet. Do you think it could be going here just straight for the extreme speed, just get rid of this Arcanine?
I think it's the Rock Slide. I think it has to be the Rock Slide where you've got Arcanine at low health. I mean, you don't have to use the Rock Slide to knock out the Arcanine, but if the Blizzard comes out from Nikhil's Ninetales, knocks out the Arcanine, that makes the Rock Slide a single target move and would do more damage to the Articuno. And I think that's a wise switch out of the Articuno here, especially since it seems like Arcanine is the faster of the two Pokemon here.
True, and I guess the Arcanine on the kill side doesn't worry about what the opposing Pokemon are going to do. It's going to be able to take those attacks, can move after them and still go for that Rock Slide. The Blizzard takes down the Arcanine, however, and it is Flare Blitz going down into this Ogerpon. That's a knockout!
What a knockout it is going into that Ogerpon. That's a big piece of the puzzle removed there for Nikhil, and it's looking like Nikhil is getting ever closer to taking the victory here and moving on to our top 4, because it's only Ice-type Pokemon in the back, and that Arcanine is here. It's locked into a Fire-type move. The Snow's coming back onto the field to boost up the defenses, but this Arcanine on the kill side hasn't been intimidated whatsoever. It's at full power, not much health, but full power to be able to try and knock out these Pokemon.
I'm right in thinking as well, even if the Arcanine gets frozen, Flare Blitz thaws it immediately, right?
Oh, now that is a question. There are only certain Fire-type moves that do that. If that mechanic comes into play, we'll learn it together here, Lou.
Oh, good
as
idea.
Helping Hand comes out, boosting up the power of the Arcanine on Emir's side, but a Flare Blitz is coming out. Is it going to be enough? It is to take out that Articuno there, and going back to its trainer, Nikhil taking 2 big knockouts in a row.
It really has been a frosty battle, but everything is heating up thanks to this Arcanine bringing a little bit of thawing power to the absolute monstrosity of awesomeness that Emir has been able to put through. The Blizzard does come through, but the Moonblast from that Alolan Ninetales will chip away at it, and this Arcanine is now free to go for the Flare Blitz and close up the set.
It's going to be the Flare Blitz getting the KO here in top 8, getting everything warmed up for our top 4, and Nikhil is going to be the winner, advancing to the top 4 here in Utrecht.